Welcome back to another episode of Vault Talks. I appreciate you guys jumping on and giving this a listen. We have an awesome guest today. He's our first real estate investor. We've had a couple business owners come on. Guest today is Dr. Tanh Truong. Got to know him the last few months through the real estate game, and man, he's got a cool story. So we're going to keep this raw today for you guys. We're both going to be ourselves, going to be a bit of a Q&A, but a little background on Tanh. Started out as a pharmacist. So he actually went through UC's pharmacy program. We kind of ran into each other. My fiance is currently in the program in her last year of rotations, and then ultimately decided to move over to commercial real estate investing. You really don't see that too often. Somebody goes to school for a doctorate degree and becomes a real estate investor, but I love it, and I love what you do. Let's jump into it. First off, Tanh, what did I miss? I know you started out in pharmacy. You want to talk about that a little bit?
JT, what a fucking honor, brother. Appreciate you having me on. Appreciate you giving me the ability to share my story here. But no, I think you covered the majority of it. I'll give a little bit more color here. For people who are just listening to the audio, I am Asian. And for a first generation Asian student, person, etc., you come from old school Asian parents, they're going to want you to get a degree in something that allows them to brag to their community, and that is being a doctor, a physician in that case, a nurse, a lawyer, engineer, something that makes you a shit ton of money, right? That they can go to their friends and be like, hey, you wouldn't even believe what my kid makes, blah, 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 things like that, right? So yeah, I went to pharmacy. Throughout school, I was always really passionate and wanted to learn more about investing because I knew the long term was once I get out of pharmacy or once I find a side hustle to actually replace my W-2 income, where am I going to put that money? And even before that, once I make that money as a pharmacist, what the hell am I going to do with that money? How am I going to let that money work for me? So I try to find avenues and learn way ahead of time in order to figure out a way to put that money to some type of work. And that was either some type of investment, whether it be in stocks, equities, etc. And that eventually ran me into another rabbit hole of real estate. I started a side real estate hustle while I was practicing as a pharmacist very shortly after I graduated, and I started building up a small portfolio of residential properties. Eventually sold everything there and I got into commercial, and I've been in commercial now. We're in 2026, so roughly 5-6-ish years.
That's awesome. What was the turning point for you to sell out of all your residential and make the move over to commercial?
I would say the biggest thing was my partners and I butting heads. So I had two other partners in the residential side, both pharmacists, and it was kind of great partnering up with other pharmacists because at the time, all three of us made a really modest income and we were able to save pretty well. So we were lendable to the banks. And with a good nest egg of savings, you're able to buy properties a lot faster. Eventually, in our venture, we butted heads on, who should get compensated for what and things like that. So we eventually just parted ways, sold everything in our portfolio, and kind of did our own things. And from there, I was kind of stuck for a little bit. I was like, do I kind of do the same shit? Do I, continue to wholesale, flip, burr, buy and hold, things like that in order to get to my financial freedom number? Or do I just do something completely different? And at that point, I still continued that trajectory for a little bit, but it wasn't something that I necessarily loved, right? And I was always learning about commercial, but it was more so multifamily. And everything that you're going to get out there from YouTube University or books or free resources, it's going to be pretty rudimentary. It's going to give you an idea of how to invest in multifamily versus other commercial asset classes. Other commercial asset classes being retail, warehouses, industrial, and office space. It was always pretty elusive for me. I didn't understand it very well, and I couldn't quench the thirst of wanting to understand it. So it was very intriguing to me, right? And at this point, again, once my partners and I parted, I was at a loss, and I figured, now is probably a good time compared to any in order to try to learn some of this stuff. So I stopped the residential stuff and pretty much put myself in full gear towards the commercial side. Luckily found a mentor, and that's how I got to where I am today.
That's awesome, man. I think for the listeners, you usually don't see somebody who's got a pretty awesome W-2 job, so to speak. I mean, you're working as a pharmacist, finally using your degree that you worked so hard for, and then ultimately, I mean, that's not where your passion lied.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, during the time I left, my last day was New Year's Eve of 2020. So this was pretty much right after COVID hit, and the quality of life was just absolute dog shit. I'm not going to lie to you. They were cutting hours, and that I think really escalated me leaving my profession earlier than expected. Because if I had it my way, let's say COVID wasn't a thing, I probably would have been there for another couple of years to build up a lot more of a cushion of savings, more of a safety net, if you will, and staying there, and would not have given myself the chance to do something big. I mean, even then, New Year's Eve of 2020, I had a pretty good little savings that would have probably lasted me maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 years. And so
Hmm.
I was able to take that leap, right? And again, if COVID didn't happen, I might have stayed there for a little bit longer to try to, get a bigger safety net before I even thought about leaving.
I love it. I mean, part of the reason I started this podcast is to teach my listeners a little bit about the infinite banking concept. I know me and you have touched on it, but I love hearing you talk about how you had to build up your savings before these investments were even possible. Because that's what I love to preach to people is you can't get in an investment until you have excess savings and you built that up. You know, you worked through the shit for a couple years, stacked it away, and it paid off.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you have to have money in order to make money for from the pretty much the basic premises of it, right? But again, you can go out there and you can make money, right?
Hmm.
But that when you go out there and let's say you have $0, you're going to go out there and you're going to hustle to make your first 1,000, then your first 10,000, then your first 50, then your first 100, right? But now you're trading your efforts, your time, your energy in order to make that capital back, or to make that capital in general. But then once you have that capital, it's if it's sitting idle, that's not what you want it to do. You want to put that money to work for you, so that even if you're hustling in the meantime, you and your money hustling together, it's better than you just hustling alone. You know what I mean?
I love it. I mean, I'm a huge believer in the velocity of money. How many times can you turn over your dollar? You know, get into a deal, borrow against it, get into another. I mean, you're going down that path right now. For the listeners, I mean, let's say somebody is working a 9 to 5 and they have aspirations to eventually leave it, start their own thing. What's maybe some advice you have for them that you saw firsthand? Maybe some things you didn't expect when you left your 9 to 5?
Well, if they're still in their 9 to 5, I would want them to, take a step back, take a 30,000 foot view and kind of look at yourself, right? Now, picture yourself 30 years from now. What does that look like? Are you still going to be in the same position or not? If you're going to be in the same position 30 years from now and you're going to be happy in that same position, I think you're fine where you are. But I would argue that you should think a little bit bigger, right? I would say you're happy in that position, you have a nest egg, your money should still be working for you in some way, shape, or form, right? But if you're still in the 9 to 5 now, and you don't see yourself there in the next, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years, and you see yourself doing something else, look at it from a view where you're trying to figure out how that looks and how to make that happen. Because the longer you stay where you are, the less of a chance you're going to see that happiness of yours coming to fruition, if you will. So I would sit down, take a step back, look at where you are for the next 30 years, and imagine if you're happy there and what you're going to be doing in that moment in time. It could be you on a beach sipping Muay Thais, getting shit faced, whatever, or you could be starting another business in some way, shape, or form, right? And I'd like to tell people from there, now you work backwards. Figure out how to get there. Let's say in 30 years, your idea of happiness is, $10 million or $1 million, whatever that number is. And then now you reverse engineer it down to, your time frame. Call it again 10, 20, 30 in our example. And then now you have to figure out your vehicle to get there. It could be staying in your 9 to 5, or it could be starting something else, or it could be like me going into real estate. right? It's important to have a good nest egg build up so that if you fail, you have something to fall back on. And I'm not saying you are going to fail. I'm saying if you do, there's a chance. There's always a risk in going out and doing something yourself, right? So I would think bigger and I would try to figure out what makes you happiest and attack it from that point of view.
That's awesome. And I know you briefly touched on you had a really good mentor that got you into the commercial space. I just want to hear you touch on a little bit how important is it to just surround yourself with the right people? You know, if you didn't have that mentor, it probably would have turned out a lot different.
It'd be really, really shitty, I tell you that. I definitely would not be where I am today without the network and the people around me. So to answer your question, JT, I think, in my business, and I think in any business, your net worth is really your network. In any business out there, it's a relationship. There's some relationship component to it. So if I didn't have the network nor my mentor from, call it 6 years ago, I would not be where I am today. The people around me have been so instrumental because they are able to give different viewpoints to me. They're able to give their unsolicited advice. And those have become very valuable to me because even though I don't ask for the advice, they're telling me things that I need to hear, maybe don't want to hear, but I need to hear it, right? And in it of itself, that relationship has network effects, right? And that's what the network comes from. You know one person, that person could know another person that could jumpstart your success, right? And that is also one of the biggest reasons why a mentor is so important. So my mentor had at the time probably 15 years in the business, and compared to me having zero in commercial real estate, that was a really nice step stool for me in order to learn from him. And also now I had access to all of the people within his network. So that really jump started my success. And the biggest reason why a mentor is so valuable outside of that is that they are there to shortcut your success. They're there to jumpstart your career and shortcut your success, right? They're there to shorten your learning curve. You know this much. They're going to teach you this much in order to be dangerous, right? So I would highly recommend anybody in any business to create a solid network around them. And I am always a proponent of mentors. But sometimes you're going to run into mentors that are paid mentors. That is there's a little bit of a caveat there. It takes a little bit of due diligence. Luckily, mine was free. So I think the good ones usually come at a lower value price versus the ones where they are saying that they're gurus and shit, and you got to pay like 20,000 to 50,000. That's where
Yep.
a lot of your due diligence has to come from.
I love that. I mean, from what I've learned, if somebody's selling a course and it smells like shit, it probably is shit. So just stay away from it. And I really liked what you talked about shortening the learning curve. Could you have been as successful if you didn't have a mentor? Possibly. I mean, there's really no way to tell, but it really just sped things up for you. I'm willing to bet you probably wouldn't be as successful today if it wasn't for the people in your corner.
I would take that bet alongside you, brother. I really would. And the other thing is, not only do they shorten your learning curve, but they also aid in your success, right? So in my business, I'm in real estate, right? If I find a deal that, let's say my business partner, I'm sorry, my mentor wasn't even a part of the deal, and let's say it's something that I'm taking down myself, and I either need the capital or just the expertise behind it. Here's two things they can provide. The mentor could most likely provide the capital. If they've been in business for 15, 20 years, they most likely have some change sitting aside. And then two is the more important piece where they can offer their expertise on the asset. So they can either tell you why that opportunity is dog shit or why it's a great opportunity. So I guess my point is they act as a sounding board for you so that they either reinvigorate your confidence in it or they help you avoid making mistakes.
I think a lot of people in real estate are guilty of it, having the blinders on, finding a deal, seeing it one way, just having other people to bounce ideas off of. I mean, I think a lot of people don't recognize the value behind that. So just having people in your corner that you trust and, like you said, have more experience than you, that's what it's all about. The most successful
100%.
people that I've met, they're always still learning. They still have mentors of their own. You don't get to the top by doing it alone, in my opinion. And I think you're a great example of that.
No, there's a good saying out there. If you want to go fast, you go alone. Why? Because you're the sole decision maker. You can make your own decisions, but there's caveats to that, right? But if you want to go far, you go together. And for me, I know that I'm not good at a lot of things. I'm probably good at one or two things, and that's about it. So I know that in order to go far, meaning grow the company large, grow as a person, etc., I'm going to need other people out there that are better than me at a lot of things. And I'm going to need to either pick their brains or bring them onto my team to utilize their expertise, right? And that's
Uh,
how you get far.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've heard a little bit about you. We haven't really touched on your company yet. So, you guys are Invest Beyond Multifamily. From my understanding, you're getting into the non residential commercial space. You want to talk a little bit more about that? Because some people are like, well, what is non residential commercial? Obviously people don't live in it, but what is it?
Yeah, I'll touch on it a little bit. So when you talk about real estate, a lot of people understand multifamily, right? You just buy a big ass building, one roof with, anywhere from 5 to a couple hundred doors. And what you're effectively doing is that you're renting out those units. So you're trading your space to a tenant for money in return. In my realm, I focus on assets, commercial assets that tenants do not live in. So we are looking at, again, the three main ones are retail, industrial, and office spaces. Office spaces, you're renting out to bigger companies that, have employees that need office space. Industrial is technically warehouses where people utilize the space for storage or logistics. Just imagine a flat slab with four walls. Very simple building, right? And then retail is like your strip centers, your regional malls, anywhere where a business is providing a service to the end customer. J.C. Penney, your restaurants, banks, things like that. So I focus on those assets because my tenants are business owners, and that is probably the biggest difference. I'm dealing with business owners versus tenants who are living and trashing your units. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of what that is. But yeah, that's what my company focuses on. We focus on those type of assets, and we try to add value to those assets, thereby increasing either dividends or distributions or asset values for the investors and myself included.
I love it. And I love how you touched on you're utilizing business owners. You're not trying to rent an apartment for $1,200 a month. And I'm sure that comes with a lot less headaches as well, dealing with bigger clients who probably understand the game a little bit more. From your time in residential, I'm sure everybody likes to say it's passive income. Did you find that residential was passive?
I did not. I think, I mean, if you had a property manager and you have everything structured correctly, to an extent, it can become passive at some point, but you're always going to be active in some way, shape, or form. Now, in the commercial side, it becomes a little bit more quote unquote passive. You're still active in it, but you don't get as many headaches and phone calls and whatnot because you're dealing with a higher caliber clientele being your tenants, your business tenants. They treat their spaces very well because they know it's their business. Because if
Mm-hmm.
it's ran down, if it's shitty, they're not going to attract a lot of customers. And if they don't attract a lot of customers, that's going to affect their sales, thereby their profits, right? So they have a minimum aesthetic perspective that they have to keep their space in, which is why they take care of their space, right? And a lot of times in my realm, we have different types of leases. In the multifamily side, you have just a gross lease. It practically says you're renting this space and you're giving me this much money. We have that in commercial too, non-residential commercial. But the leases here are going to be a lot more comprehensive. You're looking at 50, 60 pages of leases of a lease, just so that's one lease, right? And it spells out all the relationships between you as the landlord and the tenant. And a lot of times you're going to hear triple net leases. Triple net leases means a lot of the responsibilities or the expenses fall on the tenant. They're going to pay for their pro rata share, which is nice because it becomes a lot more passive from my side as a landlord. So to answer your question, JT, multifamily can become passive. There's also an active component, and commercial from my side can be a little bit more passive, but there's still some active component.
I love it. And I also want to play a little bit of devil's advocate for you. So you'll hear a lot of the time now that people are saying office space is dead, right? Ever since COVID, everybody's working from home. What have you guys seen there?
I think a lot of the headlines obviously are trying to get the big ticket items, right? You're going to see, so I'm located in the Midwest, the coastal states are where you're going to hear the biggest headlines, or they're the bigger metros. And office space being dead, I think a lot of it comes down to the CBD, or the Central Business District. If you're downtown in one of the bigger metros, you're probably going to see these offices declining. And that means they're either in foreclosure, or they are completely vacant, or, they might have a very low vacancy. And that's when it's in the shitter, because people in the past have paid, you know, 20 million, 30 million, 40, 50 million, up to hundreds of millions of dollars for these assets that are selling for pennies on the dollar. They're, I think I saw one the other day that was purchased for 100 something million, and they're selling it for like 20 to 30 million.
Wow.
So a significant loss, right? And if the headlines truly penciled down or narrowed down to those areas, I would agree with it, because that's true. These office buildings in these areas are in the shitter, and people are losing their ass on them. But if you zoom out a little bit and look at probably the suburbs, those are not as bad. Some of them have a little bit more vacancy than others. I would agree with that. But for the most part, you're seeing office buildings in the suburbs that are like 40, 50, 60% occupied, all the way up to 100% occupied. So they are taking a little bit of a hit, but they're not absolutely dead. And there are news out there, I've heard some of these bigger corporations are making their employees come back to office, 3-4 days mandatory, while you get 1 day work from home. So if anything, I think work from home is slowly dying, right?
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love working from home, because I'm self-motivated and I can get my shit done. But sometimes when you're in a rhythm or a habit of working from home every single day, being in your underwear and just a t-shirt working, it's kind of hard to bring you back in the office, where you gotta, dress up again and drive 30 minutes to work and shit, in rush hour there and back. That's gonna hurt. That's gonna suck. But that's where the trend's going, and I think it's going to revive at some time in some way, shape, or form. I just don't know. I don't have the crystal ball telling me when, and I think we're slowly seeing it now. But
Yep. I
full
mean,
recovery, no idea.
I'd agree. Even for somebody like me, I'm only in the office about 3 days a week. The other 2 days, I've actually really been enjoying co-working spaces. I don't know if you guys have dove into that at all, but I've actually seen a pretty big incline in just people that I know where it's, oh yeah, I go into the office, 2, 3 days a week. The other 2 days I'm at a co-working spot or I'm at home. But like you said, I think more and more people are slowly realizing that, well, shit, I'm not going to be able to work from home forever. They're going to make me start coming back.
Yeah, yeah. And those co-working spaces are fucking nice, man. We got some around here in the Cincinnati area. I've seen some out of state, and they really do well. They spruce it up pretty well. You got a shit ton of amenities, and I think the biggest thing outside of the amenities is that you're surrounded by other working professionals, right? You get like that networking piece during downtimes or whatever, but you get to see the productivity of other people, and I think that makes you yourself even more productive to some degree, right?
100%. One of my good buddies belongs to Social House downtown. He's brought me up there a couple times, and I've noticed firsthand when you're working in a room full of a bunch of other entrepreneurs, I mean, it lights a fire under my ass. I get a lot more motivated, and I'm like, man, I'm not gonna let this guy work harder than me. So, like you said, it all comes back to surrounding yourself with the right people, whether it's being a mentor, or just friends. It comes down to who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, what's that saying? You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It can't be any more true, right?
Yep.
So, if you're surrounded by 5 millionaires, you're going to be the next millionaire if you're not already, right? I mean, if you
Yep.
surround yourself with 5 crackheads, you're most likely going to be a crackhead.
I love it, man. I love it. I mean, that's another reason why I wanted you guys to hear from Tanh. He keeps it real. I haven't known him for too long, but man, he's a straight shooter, and I love it. I think the listeners will love it. So we've touched on what you're doing now. Are you guys currently doing any offerings?
We are always looking for investors. As far as the opportunity goes, I don't really have anything that is closed on yet. We have some in the pipeline that we're working on, but it just kind of comes down to getting it for the right price. I hate buying in our business, you make money when you buy. So you have to really hammer down on the price and you have to underwrite it correctly. I'm working on one that I really, really like. It's north of us in Centerville, Ohio. The short story is they want it for 10 and a half, and I'm trying to get as creative as I can, and I penciled it in at roughly 9. They came back at 10 with some credits, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out if 9.5 will work. So if I'm trying too hard to make it work, it probably means that it's not going to work. I have to stay very strict with where my entry is, because it not only does it protect me, but it also has to protect my investors. I could lose my money all day. I would hate losing my investors' money. So to answer your question, JT, we have some in the pipeline, nothing concrete yet, but we're always looking for additional investors. So if you guys want to partner with us, reach out to me, let me know.
I love it. And I love how you prioritize your investors because you make them happy. You guys know they're going to do more deals. Ultimately, it's going to come full circle. But you see a lot of real estate investors nowadays who just care about what goes in their pocket. Their investors are kind of just a means to an end for them. But I would argue that's not your guys' approach. Do you want to touch it all on how you guys view it?
Dude, I mean, there's been so many shitty stories out there, people raising all this money, investing in all these deals that, from my perspective didn't make any sense, and now like you're seeing the cracks in the system, right? Some of the big famous guys out there, first I hear these guys raising money, they're shit losers, they move out to a different country, change their names, made out with that money. Now some of these big guys are pretty much nowhere to be found on social media because they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, bought these assets that didn't make sense at the time. Rates are going up. Now they're shit in the bed, and now all the investors are losing all of their capital, right? So, I mean, to answer your question, JT, I'm pretty straight up, man. Like I meet my investors at a bar, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and if anybody wants to meet, I typically would rather go to a bar. I hate breakfast. I hate lunch meetings because they're right in the middle. They're right in the middle of the day, and I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
get shit done. And the other reason why I like the bar is because if you can be there for 2 drinks, it's it's a double-edged sword. You're gonna see me, who I am, and I get to find out what you're looking for, right? I get to
Yep.
find out who you are pretty quickly within 2 drinks. Let's say those 2 drinks take you up an hour, right?
Yep.
I know who you are, and you're gonna hear me cuss like a sailor, just as if I'm sober, right? So my point with this story is that you're gonna see me as I am, regardless, and I'm gonna tell you the truth regardless. And I'm not gonna tell you something that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I'm a really shitty salesman. So if I tell you these are the numbers from this asset class or this project, those are the numbers I'm expecting for me as well, because I invest alongside my investors, right? And if you're gonna ask me if I've ever lost money, I'm gonna truly tell you in real estate I have not, but I've come very fucking close to doing so, right? So so I do things a little bit differently, a little bit unorthodox, but if there are other investors out there who's looking at any type of real estate investment, you know, don't take it from me. I would do just as much due diligence on the operator, the sponsor, as compared to the deal. Obviously, you
Mm-hmm.
want to do your research on the deal as well to make sure whatever they're telling you, the numbers pencil out in some way, shape, or form, right? But you also got to look at the sponsor. Are they gonna run off with your money? And what's their track record, right? So do your due diligence, not only on the asset, but the person. Go out with them, figure out who they really are, figure out what their integrity is, what their character is, and listen to your intuition, right? If somebody sounds salesy, more than likely they're trying to fucking sell you something, right? And if they're investing alongside you, that'll tell you a couple things, right? And that's the reason why I invest alongside my investors. I have skin in the game, and your success is my success. I'm not there.
I love
I'm
it.
not there. This is the project. That's the deal. If you like it, great. If you don't, maybe next time.
I love it. And just being a man of your word, and I love how you get in your deals as well. I practice infinite banking myself, and I'm like, look, this is something that I use too. So if it's as bad as you think it is, I'm going to get screwed as well. It carries weight when you practice what you preach. And I mean, you guys are You guys are very good about that. Just wanted to wrap up. I know we talked about doing a little bit of self-reflection earlier in this and reverse engineering your goals. Have you kind of thought about what your guys' goals are over the next 5 to 10 years with Invest Beyond Multifamily?
Next 5 to 10 years, I don't ever see myself not doing a deal. The deal might change, the structure might change, but I'm pretty much a deal junkie when it comes to real estate. I can't turn down a good deal, you know. So we're always going to look for deals. We're always going to take down deals, and because of that, we're always going to need investors. So the next 5 to 10 years, I'd say I don't really have an asset under management goal because our business is a little bit different. We buy, stabilize, and sell. So that number is always going to continuously change. I think the goal would be to still do, anywhere from 2 to 4 deals a year. The good news is that with more conversations that I'm having, that opens up a lot of additional doors. So, for example, I spoke to a buddy of mine who's always been in multifamily and trying to get him to push some of his assets to commercial. He's open to it. Great. Now that allows me to look for deals that are anywhere from $10 to $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. I had another conversation with a family office the other day. What they want is 7 to 8%. Okay, and they strictly look at industrial. Okay, what are your check sizes? Anywhere from a couple $100,000 when we start with you to 10s to 20s, 30s, 40s, 50 million. So I'm like, okay, great. And that kind of comes down to the piece where we were talking about relationships, right? In your network. The more you build up your network, the more opportunities are going to open up for you. So I think within the next 10 to 15 years, I think a lot more doors are going to open for me. So I think I have to become a little bit more selective with which doors I intend to open.
100%, man. I think to wrap up, it comes down to, who you're surrounding yourself with, practicing what you preach, and at the end of the day, just being a real person, not bullshitting people because that comes back to bite you. People see right through it. They might not see through it in the moment, but they'll find out, and then that tarnishes your reputation, and there's no fixing that.
1,000%.
I did want to let you shout out where can the listeners come find you because I know they're going to be interested in learning more.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty active on social media, primarily Instagram. So if you look me up, pro_Tanh, Tanh. LinkedIn, if you search Truong, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one on there. Same picture as my Instagram. And, if you want to learn more about our offerings and fund and all that, investbeyondmultifamily.com. I do also have a podcast and a book. JT's been on my podcast. That's called Wonton Wealth. It's a little bit more real estate centric, commercial real estate in particular. I also have a book out. So if you guys are interested in any of that, feel free to jump over that way. But yeah, if you want to reach out personally, I think LinkedIn or Instagram would probably be your best bet.
Well, you guys heard it here first. Make sure you go check him out. He's a great guy. Really lit the torch for me to kind of get going in the podcast world. I came on his and I've always wanted to start a podcast, but just seeing how real you kept it, a lot of people will adjust their language to get on a podcast and you're just yourself and you've really pushed me to pursue that as well. So I appreciate you for that, man.
Appreciate you, brother. I love it.
Awesome. Well, this is another episode of Vault Talks, joined here by my man Truong. Hope to see you guys on the next one.